Now, a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany. He was a dear friend of Jesus, for Jesus stayed in his home whenever he was in Jerusalem. The man had two sisters, Mary and Martha, who were also very close to the Lord. Lazarus fell sick, and his sisters sent a message to Jesus saying, "Lord, he whom you love is ill." Now, one of Jesus' disciples who was with him when the messenger sent by the sisters arrived told me that when Jesus heard that his friend Lazarus was sick, he addressed them and said, "This sickness does not lead to death. Rather, it's for God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it." The disciple and the other disciples took what Jesus had said to mean that Lazarus was not too sick, as had been presented by the messenger, and that he would be okay in a few days. Some of them also took it to mean that the illness Lazarus had would immediately be healed by the power of the words Jesus had just spoken, pretty much just like the way it had happened to the official's son in Capernaum, who was healed when his father was told to go back home for his son would live. It therefore came to them as a surprise when 2 days later Jesus told them that they needed to get back to Judea, as his friend Lazarus had fallen asleep and he needed to go wake him up. The disciples said to him, "Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will be all right." Jesus was, however, talking about the death of Lazarus, but they thought that he was referring merely to sleep. When he saw that they were not getting it, he told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead, and I am glad for your sake that I was not there when he died, so that you may believe when I awaken him. Let us therefore go to him." When they arrived at Bethany, they found that Lazarus died on the day that the message about his illness got to them, and he had already been in the tomb 4 days. Many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them for the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary, her sister, stayed at home. When she got to where Jesus was, she said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Jesus, however, calmly said to her, "Your brother will rise again, Martha." To which she replied, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus, remaining calm, said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this, Martha?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world." When she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary, and when Mary got to where Jesus was, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." And he asked her, "Where have you laid him?" And they took him to the tomb they had laid him in. Now, some of the Jews who had come to be with Martha and Mary asked, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Jesus continued walking to the tomb, and when he got there, it was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said, "Lord, already there is a stench because he has been dead for 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone, and Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." Of the miracles that Jesus performed, none had a greater impact on people like the raising of Lazarus from death. Many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and Martha believed in him because nothing like it had ever been seen or heard. Jesus was certainly not the first person to bring someone back to life from death. For in the Torah, there were records of prophets Elijah and Elisha miraculously doing the same. But in none of those situations, when they brought people back to life, had anyone been dead for 4 days. The 4th day was important because Jews believed that the soul of a dead person hovers around their body for 3 days after their death, hoping for a re-entrance into the body. But once the body starts to decompose and the corpse changes its color, the soul knows that there is no going back and departs once and for all. Someone was considered completely dead after the 3rd day, and no one had ever been raised from death after having been dead that long. And as you would expect, some of the Jews who had witnessed the miracle ran to the temple, coming to look for us, the Pharisees, and they told us everything that had happened. And we were all in shock. The chief priest and the Pharisees called for a meeting of the Sanhedrin immediately. When the meeting started, the first question that was asked was, "What are we accomplishing? Here is this man performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him. And then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation. We must stop him." Then one of them, named Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, spoke up. "You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than for the whole nation to perish." And with those words, Jesus of Nazareth was sentenced to die. And from that point onward, Jesus no longer moved about publicly among the people of Judea. Instead, he withdrew to a region near the wilderness, to a village called Ephraim, where he stayed with his disciples. The chief priests and the Pharisees gave orders that anyone who found out where Jesus was should report it so that they might arrest him. I was devastated, for I knew that it was just a matter of time before they killed Jesus. It was hard to believe that my fellow Pharisees could be so blind so as not to see that they were wrong on who Jesus really was. I concluded that they were dead in their sin and that their only hope was to be resurrected if only they would believe in Jesus, the very same Jesus they had rejected. Join me next week as we walk through the last days of Jesus on earth.